everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Forlorn Dopes. I am one of your hosts, Cybersmily. And
greetings, programs. I am the other one of your hosts, Wisdom.
And I think today we can start off with what is on everybody's mind, which is, why is a baker's dozen 13? You can't box it symmetrically. It's just totally wrong. Of course, I am joking. We are going to talk about... did you guys just start? Yes, we did, John. We're going to start talking about what happened yesterday, right? Which was CDPR coming along and dropping some interesting news for us, which was, I think, the first is Edgerunners coming out next week. Totally excited about that.
It's looking better and better to me.
Yeah. And the other thing that they mentioned was the dropping of update 1.6, which we'll get to because that can be in our hands, and the expansion, a trailer to the expansion. So it's going to be very interesting for that. If you hear a cat in the background, I can stop that off and we can suppress that. Anyway, so
in the background.
Yeah, and I don't know which one do we want to tackle first on like our reactions.
Well, I mean, let's tackle the big one first. Let's go right ahead and start talking about patch 1.6.
Right, so there's been quite a few updates, and I know some people had thought that patch 1.6 is going to be, or I think there was miscommunications from CDPR that 0.6 is going to be the last update, which from what I could tell from the stream was not necessarily the case. But anyways, patch 1.6.
Okay, let's clarify. It's supposed to be the last patch. We're still getting the great big update next year.
Yeah. Well, is it an update and expansion? There's a difference between an expansion and an update, and it was very.
Sure.
We'll talk about that after we go over the patch. So the patch brought in 3 new missions. Technically, I would consider 4 new missions because there is a mission to go and find David's jacket. I consider that a mission because you have to talk to one of your fixers and discuss with him about how to about David and the old crew, and it's an interesting quest line. You get a few texts. I don't know if any of these missions are going to have like follow-up, or not necessarily follow-ups, but just fallout like some quests do, in which you get texts randomly in the future. So that's going to be interesting to figure out. The next is a bunch of new weapons. One of the weapons I'm afraid I have yet to play around with because the tunes I had did not have a strength of 15, which is a requirement. And that's for the hypercritical iconic precision rifle. I've yet to play around with it, so I really don't know what that thing does. But
I have yet to find it, so...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the crossover. So, if you're on the quest for David's jacket, there is a teaser for the cartoon. Great. So, definitely do that quest. It starts off in Rancho, I think, or somewhere around there. It's near one of the mega buildings, but definitely a quest to do. The other weapons, which I've played around with the guns and just the punk knife, but I haven't played around with any of the other fun stuff. I do want to try out the Cutomatics, which is the chainsword, because most of my characters will always have the chain ripper knife in Cyberpunk, because it's just fun. to have a mini chainsaw in your hand.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's it's a little bit longer than the IMI chain knife. It's more of like a chain machete.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. They've broken up all the melee weapons into classes, so now machete is its own class, which is weird enough. But my favorite thing about the melee weapons is that they have all the knives now you can throw. So you can throw the chef's knife. You can throw... I guess you can always throw the tanto and the regular knife, but yeah, there's 2 new knives. There's the punk knife and the injector knife, and those are both really cool. I was very excited to see some new melee weapons. I felt that only having the one knife and the only iconic version of it, you have to get through a mission which is very easy to miss. Like, I missed it on my main character, and I still am mad about that because knives are his second most used weapon. Right.
Yeah, I never got into a knife build. I probably should do that for this patch, because I still have an open slot of a street kid male that I need to do and fill that role. Another cool thing that they have is the cross device saving. So you can save on your PC and pick it up on your PlayStation, or play on your PlayStation, pick it up on your Xbox, which I thought was a nice feature.
Yeah. But
yeah,
the best feature that they have added is the transmog feature for your clothing.
Yes.
That is just hands down the best feature they've added to the game pretty much since it started. Now you can wear whatever you want for the stats and then change it completely as far as visual appearance.
Yes.
You just build your outfits the way you want. You can have up to 6 preset outfits, and it's a beautiful thing. You still have to buy the clothing to create the outfits to have them available, but you don't have to keep updating bullshit, except for your main, the actual statted clothing you want to wear. So you can have some goofy looking clothes underneath, but your outfit, you'll still look cool.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the challenge for console players versus PC players, because PC players, right, have the ability to download the various mods to be able to upload or have their character have basically every single piece of clothing in the game in their inventory. So transmog for PCs is a lot easier. I have a PC, but I never used that mod. I actually went out and hunted down all of it.
Well, I mean, that's the nature of PCs, though, is you guys get all sorts of groovy mods, and you get clothing that, people have created for the game. And all sorts of that. So, I mean, you can still play it straight, and then once you have everything, then you can go through and start downloading mods and what's not.
Yeah, I mean, most of the hours I spent on Cyberpunk is hunting down the pieces of clothing. Because once I got the list of all the clothing, I would just basically go to every single clothing store, find that one piece. So eventually, coming up with outfits specifically. Because I agree that the clown outfits that you used to be able to get were not satisfactory. So transmog is
no. I'd rather just get killed over and over again than look stupid.
Yep.
And I have spent so much of my time on each of my 3 characters frickin' shopping, trying to create outfits. It's ridiculous.
The other thing that is
I was just going to say, it's made worse by the fact that some of the clothing you really like is only available in lower tier bullshit.
True.
So that's no longer an issue.
Yep. Yeah, and then you have the other thing, which I don't know if I kind of have mixed feelings on is the Roach Race game. I think I'd rather have more content than a card
I mean, I'd
game.
rather have more content too, but if you're going to have video games everywhere in the world, you might
should
as
be
well at
able
least
to
be
play
able to play one of them. But yeah, it probably should have been like day one content, but they were.
The only problem I have with Roach Race is it's not true to the very old school 16-bit games, which was the map was always the same. So you just learn the pattern. This is all random, and that's the one thing that is annoying.
I mean, the idea that in 2077 we're still playing 16-bit games is it's kind of bizarre to me, but
especially when phones are more powerful than the computers I used to have 10, 20 years ago.
I mean, it would have been nice if they put like Witcher 1 in here.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been interesting.
I mean, an old PlayStation, like one game, couldn't take that much room.
Yeah. And then the other feature they added was the nibbles and photo mode. But they didn't include the iguana, which is sad because you can't have a picture with all of your four-legged family.
Yeah, it's nice to have him. I'd have rather just been able to pet him when I was in my apartment, but it's very nice to be able to take Nibbles wherever you like and just pull him out for photographs. The iguana man is cool. Like I love the iguana. He likes his chin scratches.
Yep. And then there's a bunch of added other fixes to bugs, other additional attributes to various weapons, a little bit of changing of the perks, some bug fixes for quests and gigs. The one thing that's going to drive me crazy is finding the two missing legendary pieces for the tech gear and for the media outfits. I've already been all over this freaking map, and I don't want to go searching for it again, but being a completionist, being a completionist, I think it's going to be what it is. The one feature I extremely love out of everything with this patch is the optimization for the inventory and vendors screens. Now, like I said, I've gone off and I've collected every single piece of clothing in the game, and the amount of time it would take from clicking on an item in my inventory to my stash to load it would take upwards of 30 seconds to do that transfer. Now it is just seamless and beautiful. I don't know what the issue was there and why it took so long when you had so many items in an inventory. But again, that one I do love. For those who were used to use the hack for, well, it was kind of an exploit of the target acquisition, target analysis mod, in which you could make buku bucks at low level. That has now nerfed. You cannot do that. The same goes with pretty much all the cyberware. They've nerfed all the mods that you could craft to be, the selling price is lower than the cost of actually creating it. So, John, you find the iguana. So in the heist, when you're in Yorinobu's apartment, there's like a terrarium
during the Konpeki job.
Yeah, during the Konpeki job. There's a terrarium right next to the entrance, if you go to it, you'll see an iguana, and off behind it, there's a egg. You have to pick up the egg, take it home with you, and eventually it'll hatch.
Put it on a plate.
Yeah, it takes a long time for it to hatch, though.
If you've already done the Konpeki heist and you're actually into the game now, you can get back into the building. There are several.
There used to be several
videos.
Let's put that as a caveat. Back in 1.5, those videos worked.
Do they not work anymore?
Don't know. Have you done them? I haven't seen anything about it. And of course, you know.
I mean, I did it for all 3 of my characters.
Yeah.
But that was a while ago.
Right. So, because the other thing you need to do to get into Konpeki is, if you didn't go up on the roof, there's a katana up there that is a iconic katana that is supposed to be for your stash that you need to get.
Yeah. Goes on the wall.
There's all of Yorinobu's clothing. There's Yorinobu's gun, if you didn't pick that up. There was quite a few things that are in that room, or in that apartment, that you definitely want to have as a collector. So, yeah. So my suggestion, if you're looking to make money with crafting, you need to get the legendary weapons and build those if you want money. Just because I'm insane, right? So the target analysis mod, it cost when you're at high level crafting, it could cost as cheap as 66 EB to make, and it sold for 781 EB. So you had about 1,200% profit margin on that by creating it. The next thing that's a good seller is the Burya, the pistol. That you can make
weirdest looking thing in the game.
That you can make about a 570% profit, which translates to about 1,800 EB. However, the Burya is legendary, so that means you have to have a tech at 18, and you need to be 12th level to be able to do it. Versus the target analysis, which you could start making at 5th level and just make infinite cash at 5th level. So there is that. So if you don't have a PC and don't want to make instant cash through mods, or you're on a console, they kind of strapped you on how you can make cash now.
I just noticed in the clothing vendors, there's a new option for what they show you of clothing that is not in your wardrobe already, which is very, very nice.
Really?
Yeah, so you don't have to search through, do I have that? Do I have that? This doesn't look familiar. No, you just see it now.
Awesome. I appreciate that, because when I was, like I said, doing my clothes hunt, that was the one thing that I had to write down everything and just go check line by line. Do I have that? No. Do I have that? No. Do I have that? Yes. So I'm glad they automated that.
I mean, I can't tell you how much time I spent once I hit level 50 going through and I got to have everything in purple, and now that doesn't matter. And I can still go clothing shopping because there's still a bunch of stuff that I didn't have because I never could find it in iconic or legendary. Now it's not important.
Yes, I love that feature. Thank you for pointing that out. I did not notice that. One of the unmentioned things for the patch. Another life quality enhancement, which
Indeed.
I love. Yeah. So, anything else we want to talk about with this patch? I think we'll when we start playing around with it a little more. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done any of the missions yet or gotten into anything deeper than like character customization. There are new hairstyles. I don't think much of them, but that's just me. But yeah, we'll talk more about it when we have a chance to delve deeper.
And the other thing is the Red Mod modding tools, so that you can actually download those from GOG and Steam and start learning how to mod. The only thing I think you can't really do is create adventures or scenarios and missions, just because of how complex they can be and how the engine works. So
players get all the good shit.
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, they might open it up where you know, the console games can download mods. I don't understand why.
That would be nice. Do like a Fallout 4 type thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that's where they would like to head to. So that's 1.6. The next thing I think we should talk about is the expansion.
Oh,
or
one last thing about 1.6. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but I can't find any clothing mods anywhere. So if anybody wants to pipe up, if they've found them, let me know where they can be bought.
All right. So the next is the expansion trailer, which looks interesting. So
interesting is the right word.
If you haven't gone and watched the preview, go watch it. It basically... you're about to get some spoilers. So it starts off with V giving an oath to the NUSA, which I definitely, my Nomad Vs definitely would not pledge an allegiance to anyone.
Yeah, I don't... That is... I don't think any of my three characters would. Well, maybe the ninja. He might choose to do it, but the street kid, she's not going to do it, and the nomad's definitely not going to do it.
I mean, my corpos would probably do it just because. Okay, what do you have to offer? Yeah, sure, I'll give you an oath.
Yeah,
they're the corpse.
Words are meaningless.
Exactly.
Unless I'm having to sign a document in that case.
But
yeah.
The expansion is going to be, right now, is assumed to be in Pacifica. I'm sure there's other little bits of territory outside of Pacifica that'll probably be opened up as well. If it's going to be as big as the Witcher's patch, I think they would have to.
I mean, you've got that giant frickin' complex that you can kind of hop the fence and get over to every now and then. But there's just, it's just a buggy mess in there. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I've been in the combat zone. The only thing I found there was a group of Netwatch that I could kill and then bring in cops into the area. But other than that, yeah, it's very buggy. You can fall through the world.
Yeah, there's no
at times and there's really nothing
it's
there.
It's all like under the map shit.
Yeah. But that looks quite interesting. And supposedly it's going to be very spy-ish type of scenario. So you'll be playing spy, infiltrating, and all that.
Which, I mean, I'm okay with in my Nomad character in the tabletop game. That's eventually what he did, is he became a spy, like a Nomad liaison for the intelligence community. And then, of course, the corporate ninja, he's all about that.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's a weird direction to kind of push you into.
Yeah. The other
It
interesting...
looks very...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Nah, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, it looks like it's going to tie into politics a lot. What I'm hoping, and I kind of caught a glimpse that made me think of it, is I'm not going to name any names to throw any spoilers out there, but at one point in the game, you help out a couple whose the husband is a politician.
Yeah.
And it kind of that mission tree just kind of ends on like this what the fuck note, and there's no resolution. And it looks like we might finally get some resolution for that. Maybe.
That'd be interesting.
I'm thinking that that's what it all ties into. It's also possible that this could be a I don't want to say a happy ending choice for your character, but it could lead into, you know, some kind of resolution for the V Johnny situation.
Right. Yeah, speaking of Johnny, Keanu Reeves did come back for this expansion, so Johnny is not out of your head, which implies that this is going to be before the end game.
Man, I hope. I mean, it doesn't have to. Not a single one of the endings actually shows you die.
It doesn't show that you die, but Johnny is out of your head. Now,
in a couple of them.
Now, could Johnny
either he's out of your head or you're out of his head?
Yeah. Now, could it be that Johnny comes back through the black wall and kind of helps you, right? We don't know, right? We have no clue what's going on.
I mean, I very much personally would prefer a continuation of the story as opposed to just like some in the middle of the story bullshit. I
know a lot
that always feels weird to me.
A lot of the dialogue supposedly got data mined from 1.5, which implies that it's the whole script, which I don't think it's the whole script, but it is. They do find some information about what this new the expansion is going to be about. It's going to center around a Netrunner, Songbird, I think is the name.
That's a good name for a Netrunner.
Yeah. So how that plays in, really don't know, especially from the trailer. I'm sure all the voice work has already been completed. Because there's also a hint that this is going to come out in February. Mainly because of the end of the trailer. It fades off that it says it's 2023. And as the 2023 is fading off, it leaves the 2 of 23 behind for a split second. So there's theories that it's going to come out in February. However, I do not trust any hypothesized dates. You're going to be able to play the old characters? I assume so. Because I know...
I mean, you're playing V, so I would have... Yeah.
So it's just like The Witcher. So I assume that they're going to also allow you to or bump up the levels to like 100. I think that's what they did with Blood and Wine with Witcher 3.
That would be nice.
So, yep, so that's coming out. So we got another possible 6 months if everything goes well. Hopefully there won't be any plagues happening. There won't be any major hacks
You shut your mouth right now. Don't jinx this shit.
Any major hacks to CDPR. All that fun stuff that hopefully marketing is listening to the developers this time. All the stuff that kind of went wrong with
Yeah, hopefully they just tell marketing to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they
tell
learned
the
their
board
lesson.
of directors to keep their mouths shut.
Right. So the other thing that kind of was mentioned during the stream, which was the Night City, what was it called? Night City Watch. I forget what that stream was. So there was two streams. One with where they talked about the edgerunner, they talked about 1.6, and they talked about the expansion. When they were talking about the 1.6, the senior developer or senior design developer manager, I forget his title and I forget his name, which shame on me. He hinted that there is going to be more updates for 2077 before the expansion. And the updates he talked about, and again, don't know if it's when he mentioned updates, he meant expansion or he means updates being independent. But he talked that there is going to be an update to the police system, and there's going to be the ability to do combat within your car. So you'll be able to fire weapons while you're driving, which is already...
That would be nice.
That's already a mod. And I think the developers for that mod are actually now working for CDPR. So also keep that in mind, that a lot of those modders are now developers for Cyberpunk 2077. And I think those guys are, as you can see with the transmog and a bunch of other little things that the modders are actually implementing. What used to be mods are now becoming actual game functionality. So
I wish more companies would do that. Take advantage of that shit, because the modders usually come up with really fantastic stuff, and then they get kind of shit on by the companies behind it.
Yep. Yeah, because there's some crazy mods. There's one mod I want to get installed, but I was waiting for this patch to drop, and also now to make sure that that mod still works, is there's actually a mod that for all the little secrets that are out there, right? So you come upon a scene where there's a dead body or some situation, you find a shard, and that is actually what they call a secret. There's a mod that someone created that takes all those secrets, 190 of them, and turns them into gigs from Regina. So Regina will give you a call and say, hey, there's this guy who's missing, go find him, he should be located here. And you go off and you find all the secrets. Now, I know console players don't have that. I'm sorry to tell you, but that mod I actually is recent, and I really wanted to get it installed. But again, I was waiting for this patch to drop before I do. There's another mod that converts all cars into flying cars. So the mod scene is pretty crazy, and there's a lot of it. So you might want to invest in the PC, man.
Yeah, I got no money.
Yeah.
I'm trying to invest in dinner. Jesus. PC is pretty far out of my reach.
Yeah. Need to do constant searches for free giveaways of gaming PCs. I'm sure you'll hit one of them. So that's it for that. And then the final thing that they did was kind of the trailers for Edgerunners, which looks amazing. I know some of the trailers have been in Japanese in the voice. However, they confirmed in the Night City Watch, again, I forget what the stream was called, but they confirmed that there is actually supported in multi-languages, so wherever you are, you do not have to worry about reading subtitles. I have a friend who was very gung-ho for the anime, but he's like, if I gotta read subtitles, I'm not watching it because I can't read subtitles.
I don't know how you can be into anime and hate subtitles. I got some friends like that too.
He's not into anime. He's into cyberpunk. So it's one of those things like, hey, if I can't understand it, I'm not going to sit there and read because, you know, he's an old grognard like me, so his eyes aren't as good.
I mean, I got shitty eyes too. I mean, he's turned 50, so...
Yeah, but you're paying more attention to reading the dialogue than paying attention to the actual visuals, which I always... I understand. But yeah. So, that's kind of the big news that happened around Cyberpunk. At least for Cyberpunk 2077. When it comes to Cyberpunk Red, they did drop a DLC that basically fills out all the missing content from Stories of the Red. So you have the ability to now have the maps and all the stuff with the downloads. Also, they just released the physical copies, so you can go off and buy that at your local game store as well as arthalsorian.com.
Now, that's in North America only. European buyers, apparently there's still going to be a little bit of a wait for you, but it's coming very soon.
Yeah, with today and...
For the physical copies. You can get digital copies right now as well.
Yep.
Like, there's no wait on that.
Yeah, and I think that's just the day and age we live in right now, is shipping is just a mess and everything's a mess.
Everything is, in fact, a mess.
So I think that's about it from Cyberpunk 2077, Cyberpunk Red News. I don't have too much on any other media when it comes to Cyberpunk. Again, I'm still trying to find more information about the peripherals and when that's supposed to come out. I know they stopped the principal filming of that show back in last November, December. So I don't know if that show just got canned and Amazon just didn't pick it up. I don't know, but I hope not.
I hope not, but I mean, special effects take a long time. Editing takes a long time.
Very true. And they might release it to, you know, test audience, and they're like, what the fuck is this piece of shit? Right? And then they're like, oh,
yeah. I mean, that's the sad truth with those streaming services, especially, I don't know, Netflix is going through some shit right now, and so is HBO. Like, there's big shakeups at both, and a lot of good shows are being canceled or just not picked up in the first place.
Yep. Yeah, so if I hear any fun news about any Cyberpunk TV or movies that are coming out, I will always keep you guys posted. Finally, in our news, I pushed out a new release this past weekend, which upgraded the ACPA generator. So now you're not only able to make powered armor, but you're also able to make WADs, which are work-assisted droids, but you can't say droids. They are drones, in my opinion, because we don't want Lucasfilms suing anybody, especially over that. So yes, so now you're able to do that. There's other tweaks on that editor that allows you to customize a lot more. I know it was a request from some of the fans of my sites to get implemented because people are looking to get more power armor involved in their campaigns, which I think is crazy. Because if you're going to...
Well, I mean, if you're playing characters who have power armor, you got to throw them up against power armor.
Yeah, if you're bringing power armor into your games, your edge runners are making bad life choices.
Cyberpunk is a great big genre. There's room enough for Neuromancer. There's room enough for Blade Runner, and then there's room enough for Appleseed and Bubblegum Crisis. You can have it all, baby.
Also, I did a bunch of other fixes on the site. Some minor bug fixes. The other major thing I did, which was the previous release, which was, I think we had. I don't remember if this came out before or after our previous episode. I think it came out after. Is that the Datafort designer, which is kind of going to be a lead-in to what we're going to talk about tonight. My Datafort designer, you now have the capability of doing drag and drop with the icons. It's still a little buggy. My first attempt at doing that with the technology I work with. But hopefully it's useful and you're able to create the various data forts you might want. So, that said, tonight's topic is we're going to talk a little bit about Netrunners, specifically in Cyberpunk 2020. Because I've noticed through the various communities, people are always asking, how is it done in 2020? Why is it so hated? Why do people find
a lot of the newbies dropping in just don't understand.
Well, they don't understand the complexity to it, and they don't understand why there's so much hate for it. And again,
the struggle is real, people.
People might say hate is too strong of a word, but when I've talked to some
They've
people
never
about
read
it,
people who say hate is too strong of a word have never read that shit.
Right. So
tried to implement it in their game.
So we're going to get into that. So what we're going to do is kind of talk a little bit about the raw, right? The rules as written of Netrunning, how Wisdom created IU and how IU addresses Netrunning and hacking. And then I will talk about my rules that I use to kind of streamline it. And then we can talk a little bit, I can talk about my rules that I created and also another way of how I do net running, right? So the first...
over the years, there have been, in addition to all the player resources, they've tried to fix it themselves over the years. From what it was, from how it appeared in 2013 and 2020.
Yep.
And then how they completely changed it for red, but there's just a lot of incremental steps and various alternate methods of net running, official and not unofficial, in between.
Yeah, and for me, it seems like red went back to the way 2013 did it. So I guess we can talk a little bit about the history. So
yeah.
2013, so the concept of net running is from Neuromancer, in which the user, the hacker, jacks into the virtual world and goes off and tries to infiltrate a system, a corporate system, whoever's system. And basically...
It's very much... like Lawnmower Man style virtual reality.
Johnny Mnemonic had
Johnny
a bit of
Mnemonic.
It. There was another good one. There was a movie called Disclosure with
that had a good one.
Michael Douglas and Demi Moore. It's actually, that's a good corporate movie to watch if you want to get inspired. But yeah, so there's
that movie existed. Holy shit!
Yeah, remember that? I liked how they did the virtual world aspect of their computer system, which is one way of visualizing it. So, 2013, the concept was is pretty much the same concept that's followed throughout all the systems. Is that you have a a netrunner who has a deck that translates the net into visuals for the user, and that user then goes off and does whatever. Doesn't really get into why you would be converted into the situation, but it's just a visual aspect of translating the computer system.
Direct neural interface. I mean, you have to have your own personal icon so other users can interact with you.
Right.
Like, it's all about it.
So that's the premise.
At some point during the episode, we need to talk about like our own personal interpretations of how the net works beyond the rules.
Right. Okay. If we get to it, we get to it. I know sometimes we like to talk quite a bit, but so we'll get to the topic of what is the net toss. So in 2013, the netrunner would have the ability to plug in, be able to, over the telecoms, hack a system, or infiltrate a building and hack the system as well, or hack their system as well. The premise of all three versions of Cyberpunk is that there is some type of map to give some type of visual explanation of how a system is laid out. In 2013, what it kind of looked like was a flowchart, right? So you would have nodes that represent a program, a data wall, code gates, data files, a CPU, controller nodes, similar to how Cyberpunk Red does it. However, unlike Cyberpunk Red, in which it's kind of this binary tree structure, 2013 could be any type of graph or map in which you could have multiple nodes leading off from one node. And there would always be an entrance point, maybe multiple entrance points, and other possible exit points to other parts of the system. So as a GM, you would have to write out, the flowchart map, fill it in with what you think it is, and then the runner would go against it, armed with a bunch of programs in a cyber deck, and the GM would walk them through that, right? Then we cut to 2020, which is a little more open world and a little more complex. So you have the concept of now you have a city map, a region map, a world map. Region maps actually came in from Bart Morse's guide, but you had a world map and city maps, and the aim was to build up trace to prevent any type of tracking or tracer programs from finding out where your physical location was, so a hit team or the police could not come and basically throw you in prison immediately or kill you.
Nice. Buster.
Yeah. So then the next layer, of course, is the city map. You would go into the city and go to the data fort you want. And then the data fort would have its own map that you would fill in and create with how many CPUs it is. You would create a structure to it. They give a perfect an example of using crossword puzzles to create the system and what it would look like. And then it would basically turn into a dungeon crawl, right? In which the netrunner would go, I'm going to enter through this wall or break through this wall or break through this code gate. And whatever's on the other side, I'll fight the programs. I'll go to this CPU, figure out or install a virus, check out these MUs to find the data I'm looking for, and deal with any other things. Right, and the concept around that was that a data fort, and I think it's a misconcept in my opinion, is that a data fort included everything about an office, right? So all the office terminals were linked to this one data fort. all the security cameras would be linked to this one data fort. All the security doors would be linked to this one data fort. And
the fire alarm, the
yeah,
smoke detectors,
the elevators,
the automated coffee
cameras,
makers.
everything would be connected to this one data fort. And I think that was a misconception that a lot of referees tried to put everything into the one data fort and not think about, well, if I'm a business, there's risk to keeping all that stuff online and accessible that someone from halfway across the world can come in and infiltrate. Because even in today's cybersecurity, they never talk about if they get hacked. It's always when we get hacked, because they make no mistaking that they are unhackable. And I think that's true back then with real world computer systems, and I think it should have held through in the gaming system. So the problem that a lot of the community speaks about when it comes to 2020 is that the netrunner stays in his apartment and he's not part of the team when they go off and they infiltrate a facility or an office or whatever. And I've never run it like that.
Yeah, the GM is running two completely separate games because the rules for netrunning in 2020, they don't follow the same structure that the rules for everything else does.
Right. So oftentimes it would be the GM or the referee would take the netrunner aside and spend half an hour to an hour having that netrunner run the whole fort and do everything within that fort.
Because it's supposed to all take place in the blink of an eye.
Well, and again, the concept is 3 net turns is equal to 1 physical turn in 2020, which I don't think people realize. There's that translation as well. So, guess what? In red, how many net turns for every physical turn? 3 net turns. So that ruling hasn't really changed. And I think the concept is, hey, this guy's going to sit there and run off and he's going to hack the whole system, which, unlikely, that the runner, A, would hack the whole system, B, that people aren't actively being in the data fort to notice, oh, wait, there's a stranger here, right? Or a SysOp coming in and seeing it, right? So a modern computer system, there's multiple people always in the system. Now, granted, in a big server farm, it's very hard to detect all of them, but I think from here, it really, the server farm is not as complex as it is in the real world. So how do you net run, right? So first thing is you get a deck, you get a bunch of programs, you go in, you log in to the LLD, you log into the city map, you go to the LLD, you try to break the security, right? So each LLD or LDL has.
I was going to say, is it LLD or LDL?
It's been a while. And I think I'm one drink in. So, anyways, you have a security level. You have to roll underneath that security level to break, or you have to roll over that security level to break into the system. And if you do, you get the trace value. If you don't, then there's a chart that you roll to see what happens. You can be cut off from the net, or they figure out who you are and they're sending NetWatch after you. There's a couple of things that can happen when you try to hack that. So you go off, you build trace because you want trace, because the reason why you want trace is if in a data fort there is a tracing program, you roll the tracing program strength plus a d10 versus the trace. to see if you get traced. So you want to try to build at least 10 or so, about 10 points of worth of trace, which is not unreasonable. Again, you got to start off with the city you're from, which would be Night City. So then you would look at the world map. I'm wondering if I should share my screen for this. Probably be helpful. Let me try and share my screen. Hold on a second while I open up OBS. Just so you guys have the visuals. Is this it? Yes. Right. Right. So you have a city, or the world map. There's another version of the world map which kind of segregates the various areas within the world. Regions really get a lot more information in Bartmos's guide, so it's a lot more fluff, but it's kind of a second layer to the whole complexity of the world. So in the world, you have the ability to encounter other netrunners, but the reality is, if you're a GM, you're not going to do that unless you're one-on-one with that one player and they want to have fun. So netrunning can be a great one-player game as a referee. The other thing is making the whole team netrunners, right? And they're off hacking major systems and taking down the corporations. They also have space. Not going to get into space. That's a whole a whole other concept. So as you can see in here, in this chart, there's the locations, or all the cities that list the security level and the trace that you get from it. And then again, who controls it. So these are the people who are going to throw some people after you if you try to hack it. And then you get into the city. So you start from the city. You would then go into the world, and then you have a movement of 5 squares, and it has to be straight. So either you do horizontal or vertical. You can't go diagonal. So once you're in Night City, you would just build up trace by going to like Salt Lake, hitting San Francisco, going back to Night City, and that will build you up between Night City. We got 2, San Francisco, 2, 6, Salt Lake, 1, so that's 5. Not a lot, but you're busy. So then you come back into Night City, and then you just go to whatever data fort you want within the city, and then from that data fort you would go to, and again I'm going to kind of scroll down to a data fort, right, which is kind of like that, right? You go into that data fort. Once you're on this map, again you're moving 5, but on this map you have 20 squares of vision, and you would go in and try to hack this data fort. Now, as a player, you really shouldn't know what's inside, which is great for the VTTs, because you can do fog of war when it comes to planning this out. And then the netrunner would decide, okay, I'm going to punch through this data wall and I'm going to punch through this code gate. So hopefully you have a program that does both. If not, you can only use the program against the object you're going against. So for code gates, you need a code cracker. For data walls, you need something like a hammer or some other intrusion type of program. And for that, you would then, again, interface as a skill, not needed. And we're not using any type of initiative quite yet, because there's the netrunner has yet to encounter anything. When they get into the data fort and there's a program behind it, that's when you would probably get into the initiative cycle. So you don't even have to bother with initiative if there's no programs outside or any netrunners on the outside. So then you roll the strength of your program plus a d10 versus the strength of the code gate plus a d10. And if you win, you break through. If you don't, you can try again. The only thing that would alert something inside is there are intrusion programs for walls that'll make noise. I think Jackhammer is one of them that'll make noise, and what noise means is any programs that are within this area will be alerted to the Netrunner and their intrusion.
Yeah, which set off internal alarms.
Yep.
ICE is wonderful.
So once I broke it into this data fort, actually let's do this because I have it open. So as you can see, this is my Datafort designer. I can quickly create a map for us for gaming purposes. I need to throw in another, right? And again, this is a random map I created based on the books. The reality is a third CPU is probably not going to fit in here unless I move, come on, where is it? There we go. Nope. Again, like I said, my drag and drop is buggy. So I'm just going to remove you and make it so I can have 3 CPUs. So the random generator isn't that great. Again, I use the books. I'm going to try to improve this to make it more realistic. And throw in another program. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, again, as a Netrunner, I hack into this data wall, and I come to find a program behind it. Once I find a program behind it, then we get into the initiative cycle. Initiative is the Netrunner's reflex, which I don't quite get, but it is their reflex plus their deck speed plus a d10 for their initiative versus the system's intelligence plus a d10. So bigger systems are going to act quicker. Weaker systems like this are going to be pretty trivial to hack into. Wow. We lost over quite a few people. I guess people don't want to learn about Netrunning. Anyways, hopefully the people who are staying on, you learn a little. If not, well, hopefully people who watch the YouTube will. Anyways, so they fight against this particular program. Then you determine what kind of programs there are. So 4 is a generic program. Let's turn him into something better. Let's call him Killer. Yeah. Right. So the Netrunner would face off of this Killer. And the Killer would... Oops. No, that's not the program I wanted. Come on. The Killer would fight against whatever anti-program the Netrunner would have. And if the Netrunner doesn't have an anti-program, guess what? The Killer's not going to do anything to him. I'm trying to get to the section in which there is they talk about the actual rules. The rules are really like 5 pages long. The bulk of the Netrunning section is program details, fluff, virtuals, and Datafort designs. So you would turn to here in this section. Actually, it's less than 5 pages. Right? So we have combat, computer intelligence plus a d10, Netrunner's reflex plus deck speed plus a d10.
I mean, there are so many fucking programs.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to Dungeons and Dragons, right? In which you have spells. There's so
really,
many
that's
spells.
what the whole thing is supposed to do. It's supposed to be the
wizards.
spellcaster version for Cyberpunk.
Yep. And then when you get into the actual combat, they'll determine exactly what are you actually rolling, right? So you would go to this particular section if you have a stealth or evasion program running. The attacking program would check to see if they can even see you. For example, maybe you entered the fort with invisibility. The Killer 6 would roll against your invisibility, which is a strength 4. So the Netrunner would roll a 4 plus a d10 versus the Killer 6 plus a d10. So there's a good chance the Killer might spot you. However, the Killer isn't really going to do anything because it's an anti-program. So it's not going to harm the Netrunner. But any programs the Netrunner is running, the Killer's going to attack. So the Killer, once he wins initiative, would then go in and attack. And again, is there attacks against programs, right? So the Killer would roll a d10. Or use to attack other programs when successful attack is made. So again, the Killer would roll a d10 plus its strength against the strength of the program. So again, it's attacking the 4. It hits the 4. It'll do damage. You would have to look up what Killer does. I think Killer does 3d6 damage, and the damage would basically reduce its strength and cause it to be destroyed. Now, there's some programs that'll actually re-res, but again, those are different options. And I'm not going to go into all the minutia that it comes with programs. So,
much minutia.
Yeah. So, anti-systems. So this is where you're actually hacking the CPUs and or the cyber decks. So, an anti-system program can attack the Netrunner's deck, which can wreak havoc on their deck. And again, each program has their own description of what it does. So, like Firestarter will cause the deck to explode and catch on fire. And if, for example, the Netrunner got hit with a glue, that deck is starting to fire and you're trapped in the net. Granted, as soon as your cyber deck finally kicks the bucket, you'll be revived, but you'll now have a fire to deal with. Again, this is a different combination, right? So it's the anti-system program strength plus a d10 versus the code gate or data wall strength to try to infect the system. And then finally, the actual use of interface is if there is an anti-personal program attack against the Netrunner. This is the only time you're using interface, plus your intelligence. So, for example, Cerebus is an anti-person program that can cause damage to you. Zombie is another one. Lich is another one that can cause either intelligence damage or wounds. So this is the only time you actually use interface, this skill, in Netrunning, which I think is very odd. I don't think... and that's about it for combat, right? So once the GM has the user go and fight all these programs, right? Because the programs will be able to see you. Granted, if there's a data wall involved, there's a good chance I can kill this program and only this program reacts, because this program nor this program would be able to see me in this square. However, if I move anywhere close to them, they will then have a chance to attack. These are bloodhounds, which means they'll do a trace on me. If I look at the strength of 3, so I roll a d10 plus 3 against my trace of 6, there's a good chance that they're going to find me. I think it's a 70% chance that they're going to start following me. But that's going to take time, right? So as a GM, you can hand wave how long it's going to take while it goes off and do that. So the Netrunner can then go into the MUs and start searching the data. Each MU contains a certain amount of information, right? So here you can see, even though they're called MUs, they're actually multi-MUs. You can have up to 10 MUs in each of those MUs, and that includes programs as well. So here in my generator, you can see I randomly rolled. There's Black Ops information in here, database, enter office, and all the various data that would be used by a corporation. So as a GM, I would flag whatever MU the Netrunner is supposed to go to, or I might just say, hey, this is the MU that you're going to find it. There's an encrypt file. Use your decryptor to get that information and get the hell out, right? So that's it for kind of doing the net running. The other aspects of a Netrunner, which I think are often overlooked, is their ability to control remotes. With that, they are able to find any remotes within a given radius. I want to say 30 meters. Again, most of the Netrunners I have played with always forget to use it. that action, which always baffles me. But as a GM, I'm never going to remind them to play how they should play their characters, unless they are a new character or a new player. Sorry if I'm scrolling so fast. I'm not sure if all this content is really feasible on the net, right? But for review, run programs, create and delete. So those are visuals. So these are the kind of actions a Netrunner can do, which is log in, log off, run a program, use an LDL, copy any files or other programs. I don't think you can copy programs because rules. Erase programs, read information, edit, and create and delete. They didn't. I thought control remote was in. Oh, here it is. Locate. So you can locate remote 400 meters. That's humongous. That's pretty much every single remote device within a facility, in my opinion. Holy Christ. Forgot how heinous that is. And then once a Netrunner finds a remote, for example, oftentimes what I use this for is they're at the chain link fence. They notice that there is cameras. Netrunner would use this ability to locate if that camera is a remote camera, i.e. it's Wi-Fi. If it is, I'm going to try to control it. However, if you try to control it, you need to make sure that you have a controlling program. And then this is actually different and again, the inconsistencies of how tasks are succeeded always varies within Cyberpunk for all versions, I think. Which is basically to gain control of that remote, you would have to roll a d10 and roll underneath the controlling program strength. So, or equal to or underneath. So if it's a program that's strength 4, you would have to get a 4 or below. And you have control over that camera that you spotted and then shut it down. But with a 400 meter range, you can find all the cameras and all the mics, right? So this is where the misconception happens with, I think, some referees, is that these cameras would be part of the data fort, right? So I know this data fort is kind of maxed out, but I can give some room into it, and I can add in a camera. Right, so the assumption would be these cameras are for internal cameras, these cameras are for external cameras. And if you actually read some of the source books and adventures the data forts get into very complex, especially the ones in Bartmos's guide. I love the Arasaka because it's actually multi-level fort, and they play with the 2 dimensions, which is I always love. So the misconception is these cameras are in the data forts. That for an external user halfway across the world can go in and hack these cameras. My opinion is this is a secured facility. These cameras are definitely not going to be tied to the net. They're going to be locally sourced. There's going to be an internal security system that a netrunner is going to have to get on premises and jack into to be able to control these. And again, that brings the action into the game, right? So now, and I did that not recently, but in my last campaign, I did have a netrunner who they never got past the lobby, but his criteria was to try to get into the system and try to take it over. They didn't get that far because reasons. They botched their entrance. So that's something that a netrunner would do, right? Is I'm going to go in as the cleaning crew late at night. We go in, I jack into the system and try to start taking over the security system. Or finding the remotes, taking over those remotes. Now, again, as a referee, you would have to say, okay, who's monitoring those cameras? Are they going to see them suddenly face downwards? And is that going to cause an alarm? Is it better for the netrunner to try to hack into the security system first, which means getting to the camera, jacking into the actual hard line, and overriding it? Or maybe even coming up with a device that you give the players that it's like magnetic. You have to just slap it onto the side of a camera and it'll tie into that camera and allow you to take control or change the feed and put in a loop of the image. Right. So I think that's the main misunderstanding of net running that I've often seen, that I think a lot of referees point out as a weakness with the system. So that's kind of net running in a general sense, raw, right, as written. So let's get into how Wisdom has changed it with IU.
I mean, here's the deal. With Interlock Unlimited, it was primarily written to be just a generic universal system. So my computer rules, my hacking rules, they're 3 pages long. They don't. It eliminates most of the extraneous stuff and like streamlines the whole process, so that it works much more in line with the rest, the basic formula for the rest of the system. Like, it doesn't feel like you're playing a different game anymore. First off, there's the Netrunner. With Interlock Unlimited, multi-roles are just how it's done. With rules as written, only the Netrunner can get into the net at all, really. With Interlock Unlimited, that's not the case, and anyone can take points in net running. So anybody can at least try. Beyond that, it's because it's a multi-genre, because it's a universal system. I really tried to cover everything from like the earliest computers when, hard drives were the size of, a house, up to, the future where you're carrying around cyber modems and they're the size of a pack of cigarettes and they do amazing things. How I did that was like setting a CPU speed for what's possible, or a max CPU for what's possible in any given era. With, of course, the earliest computers, they'd have a max CPU of 1 because they had less processing power than your cell phone. And then max speeds, which begin at -10 and get up to +15 for the futuristic stuff. Programs, there's no long list of programs. You create the program, or the program is there for a very specific purpose. Like if you're a music editor, you've got programs that are going to help you, produce music, things like that. And they'll provide like a +1 or +2 to whatever the skill you're trying to use them for. It's much more simplified than as far as the actual computer itself. Then it gets into things like, you can create a virus, and the virus will, either destroy data or transmit messages. It'll record what people are doing, and based on in the first place, the Netrunner gets to add his role to the level of his role to 2 skills: programming and interface, or programming and system knowledge. So to create a virus, you write a program, and the level of your skill will determine the DC of the virus, which is how hard it is to detect, how hard it is to fight off. When it gets into actually like hacking into the computer, that evolves at the same rate that the computers themselves are going to evolve. So, like in the early days of computers, it was super simple. If you could get into the computer, you could fuck it up majorly. As computers evolve, that becomes harder and harder to do. But more moving parts is also the easier. When something does go wrong, the harder it breaks. To hack a computer, the character must first roll his library search to find the specific target via the net. Now, you can alternately know the net location of the target, and then you don't have to roll that, such as like, if a government official contacts you, you've got that guy's IP. So the library search itself is unnecessary. But once you have your target, the hacker will roll an opposed roll against the targeted computer. And it'll be the hacker's intelligence, plus their programming skill, plus their interface, plus their computer speed, plus a D10. Versus the target computer's computer speed, CPU, and protection level. It sounds complicated as I explain it that way, but on paper it's very simple.
Yeah, because you've probably already added all this up.
Yeah, like if you're using the IU sheets, and I've got hacking sheets just for this, it's all there. When you've already added it up, everything's ready to go. In near future and beyond settings, hacking into a computer requires the character to interface directly via virtual reality. It's your net running stuff. As it is assumed that not only have protection programs escalated to a point that typing commands fast enough by hand is just not feasible, but also that computers themselves process so fast that controlling them any way other than directly via neural interface is also not feasible, and that can get quite dangerous. Up to the modern era, a failed roll on by your hacker, you just don't get access. A failure of more than 5 points means your IP's been logged, and you can no longer attempt to access. In addition, for every 3 points of failure, there's a 10% chance that they traced your location, and they're telling the police about it, or whoever they tell. In the near future, not only does all that occur, like in a cyberpunk setting, but when using your direct neural interface, when you fail, you also take a 1d6 of damage for every 3 points of failure that you, as you set off another data wall in the target computer, if they're present. Like sometimes you'll find an older computer and there just won't be that stuff, resulting in an extra d6 of damage. The damage is stun electrical damage, and it just represents electrical feedback. The damage will heal at a rate of a point a minute, even though it is taken through direct neural face at the base of the skull. So it can kill you, but if you survive, you'll pretty much be okay. And this damage, of course, is not doubled, just because, Jesus, why would you?
Because you're sadistic, GM.
For example, I'm sorry?
Because you're sadistic, ref?
Yeah, I mean, you can be sadistic, but it's not recommended. For example, young netrunner, little Timmy, he doesn't know what he's doing yet. He tries to hack into a video store to erase his late fees. The owner of the video store has a computer that has 2 data walls set up, and Timmy fails and sets off the computer's self-defenses. He takes 2d6 damage. That's the way that works. Now, if you beat that, the amount of points you beat the target computer by determines the amount of time in rounds times 2 that you have to spend in the target's computer system before it detects you as a threat again, requiring you once again to oppose the computer. For every round a hacker remains undetected, he may attempt an infiltration action. And there's a chart here for that. You can make a system knowledge check, delete a file, copy a small file, copy or edit a mid-size file, edit a small program, things of this nature. You can do shit inside that system, be it steal information, implant information, whatever. And of course, there are DCs for each of these actions. Like if you're just trying to open a computer program, that's nothing. It's a DC of 10. If you're trying to get into top secret data, that's a DC of 35 plus. I mean, they're going to protect that shit. And during the course of his hack, at any time, they can be noticed by an intruder, by a human or an AI on the target system. Detecting the hacker by the user requires an opposed check. The formula is, the user, the person who's being hacked, it's their intelligence plus awareness notice plus interface plus die 10. While the hacker is intelligence plus system knowledge plus interface plus 1 die 10. So it's just an opposed roll to see if anybody notices anything that's up. If they do notice, the person being hacked can attempt to trace the program by making a system knowledge plus interface plus computer speed plus D10 versus the hacker's original infiltration check, or they can enter into computer combat, which at this point it's hacker versus user, and it works like combat outside of it. The attacker as their intelligence, programming skill, interface, and computer speed plus a die 10, and the defender intelligence plus programming skill, interface, it's the same formula. And that's just basically how it works. It's a much more simplified version that eliminates all extraneous bullshit.
I wouldn't say it's simplified. I think it's a little more streamlined, in which you don't have to worry about a map. It's just...
Well, okay, by simplified, yeah, you don't have to worry about the map. You don't have to worry about, a book full of fucking programs. You don't have to do any of that. Plus, it works, like the skills that you use are different, but it works in the same way as everything else in Cyberpunk.
Right.
And Interlock does. That it's just, your skills and modifiers plus a roll versus the target's DC, which is, of course, modified by whatever it's got going on.
And you don't have any, like, special attacks that can happen either, so...
Right. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do in there, but it's all fairly straightforward. Like the math maybe would get hard if you don't have the shit written out for you already, but in effect, it's a much more, it's much simpler to use than rules as written.
Right.
That pretty much takes care of the Interlock Unlimited method.
It's pretty straightforward. So I do have a version as well. If we go into my site, and you go to the quick NR, just going to open this on the side. There's one other program or one other utility.
I mean, for IU, everything from like how to build a computer to like computer hacking and combat. It's only 3 pages long, so,
right?
With images.
So my system, again, was trying to simplify the complexity of 2020 into just a couple of roles. So one is go off and build base link, right? So trace. My suggestion is to go off and use my utility that allows you to build trace, which is this wonderful thing. So here I would say I'm going to start off in Night City, and then let's just say I start off here, I travel, and I come to here.
Look at that.
And I go hack it.
That's beautiful.
So I hack this, and now I'm going to go up to the region. And then I'm going to go hack this to build some trace. Then I'm going to go over here to San Francisco, build some more trace. And then I'm going to come back here and head back into the city. And then I'm going to head over to Arasaka. So, also in my utility, I actually added in the hacking difficulty that it uses my system. So this is Arasaka, right? And I tell that, it has a SysOp. Technically, there should be an AI, but the choice of whether a system has a SysOp or AI is a random roll for every data fort here. Just keep that in mind. I was just probably should actually implement it a little better, but for now, this is what I use. So I've built up my trace, which is trace 6. So I'm ready to go to the next step. So the next step is do the intrusion, right? So as a GM, I'm going to determine whether or not I have a data wall, give a data wall and a code gate strength for that data fort. So they can be different. The Netrunner, again, you're unlike Wisdom System. I'm actually going to have programs, so you want to pick either a decryptor or an intrusion program, and you tell me whether you're going through the data wall or you're going through the the code gate, and you figure it out just like rules is written. Roll a d10 plus a strength versus the strength plus a d10. If you're using a noisy program, that I'll actually add in a difficulty into the next roll, right? So as you can see here, a hammer can be heard 10 spaces away, so add 5 to the difficulty roll. So it's based on half the number of spaces that program is noisy. There's ones that are, 20 square feet or 20 squares, so keep that in mind. So I'm trying to use Cyberpunk 2020 system and their programs into this system. Once I've gotten that as a netrunner, like Derek says, is I'm going to first calculate everything to come up with what's called my program modifier. And the program modifier is for each type of program: anti-system, evasion, anti-program. I'm going to add up all the strengths. I can only have one of each type, so I can only have 3 programs adding their strengths together. Once I've added all or looked at the strengths, I then determine what is going to be the modifier. So if it's a strength 1 to 3, it's a +1. For 4 to 6, +2. And yes, this is a little complex, but again, you would just quickly do this. I probably should integrate it into my other programs to do this calculation for you. I think I actually do. So if you actually create a character, the cyber deck, the PM will actually be automatically created for you, so you don't even have to worry about it. So again, using my tools, remember, cybersmily.net. So once I get this program modifier, I then roll the Netrunner's intelligence, their interface, plus the deck speed, plus this program modifier versus the Datafort difficulty. And again, each Datafort will have its listing. As you can see, 30 is pretty damn strong, so you better be a good netrunner, especially if there's a SysOp and an AI in that Datafort. It becomes almost really, you need to roll high, even if you are a good programmer, right? So think about it. If you have intelligence of 10, interface of 10, that's 20. Get a speed of 5 plus a program modifier, you can get up to a +12. So that's 37. So going against a 40, you got a 70% chance you're going to be successful. So that's, of course, being Bartmos. So even though, and then again, Bartmos' interface, I think, 13. So he automatically gets... So what happens is, as a referee, I can then say, okay, I'm going to need so many of these rolls to get the certain amount of data, right? So maybe it's the data is buried somewhere in the data fort, and the netrunner's looking for 4 bits of data or 4 pieces of information. I really don't get into viruses, although as a referee, I would kind of ballpark it with the player on what they were trying to achieve. But again, they would still have to make this roll. So they make these rolls. If they fail, they then determine the margin of failure. So if I try to hack into a black system, luckily there's no SysOp or AI, and I roll a 23, I missed it by 7. So if I miss it by 7, I then go to the charts, right? So it's a black data fort. I miss by 7. Call into internet warrant issue, trace attempt as a result. So basically there's a trace attempt after them as a result of 1 through 5. So basically a trace attempt at strength 9 is done against the person. Again, if I go back to my trace build, I have 6. So I roll a d10. Hopefully they don't trace me, right? However, with a trace of 9, good chance that they are going to trace me. If I fail to roll even worse, then it's going to cause more damage, causing my deck to freeze, trace attempts as a result from the above. You could also lose all your programs from your deck, and even the severe, right? If you're really bad, i.e. you roll a 1 and fumble, there's a good chance you're going to be taking damage, right? And a Weefle runner is definitely going to die if they try to go against a black system. So that's my system. It's definitely a little complex, but it's a little more simplistic when dealing with Netrunning. And
Plus, you've got all the groovy tools that make it fun.
And I made the groovy tools to make it fun to help out the players with it. So the next thing I do when it comes to Netrunning is I might just boil it down to a couple roles, right? Hey, okay, you're gonna defeat this, try to break into this system, and I go into a narrative, right? Okay, you see this complex structure of, for example, with Arasaka, you see a Japanese medieval fortress in front of you. Do you go through the gate? Do you go through the wall? You go through the gate, fine. We'll do the code gate, or the data wall, the intrusion. You get into this one area. You see two hounds. You have invisibility. They don't notice you. You go further, right? And you don't have to use a map to kind of describe this out, right? You tell the player, well, from your sources, actually it's SIA, which is a program that you should tell your netrunners to use, is you'll be able to see what things actually are in this virtual space. So you'll notice that the hounds are actual hounds, or dog program, or you see a foo dog when in reality it's actually a service. You try to avoid that and escape detection, and you notice a chest that you definitely understand is a MU. You head over to the chest, you open it up, there's all these scrolls, you start rolling the scrolls to figure out what data you're looking for, and eventually you find the heading you're looking for. You find, it's encrypted, decrypt it, and kind of play it that way. That way is a little more quicker when dealing, as opposed to this, right? Doing the data fort map. Because what you're doing is, okay, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I move here, I attack this program, do that. Okay, now I'm going to head over to this MU by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I got a program, I got to attack it, I'll defeat it. Now I'm going to search that, so that you're kind of removing the calculations of where you are in the fort and making it more of a narrative, which also will speed up Netrunning within 2020. And again, you could use the narrative concept within Cyberpunk 2013, which they kind of allude to, and you could probably do it within Cyberpunk Red. Red is a little more odder because it's a binary tree structure, which basically you're in an elevator and you go floor by floor. So that's a little odd on how to do that and turning that into kind of a narrative. But you do a little bit of narrative, like what programs you face versus what you counter next. So any of those systems of using what we've described is, by all means, helps with Netrunning, and in my opinion, don't be afraid to allow a player to be a Netrunner. One caveat to that is you need to stress to the Netrunner, whatever system you decide to use, that they know the rules as well as you.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
On my last campaign, my player who wanted to be a Netrunner, I stressed to him, listen, you need to read the rules. Yep, I'll read the rules. Like, you have to read the rules. You have to know what's going on if you want to become a Netrunner. Yep, I want to be a Netrunner, and I will learn the rules. Didn't pick up the book. Didn't read anything. Constantly asking me my opinion on what I should do. And I'm like, I told you in the beginning, this is on you, not me. If you want to play this character, you need to know the rules. And every time he did a net run, it would be like, okay, so what are the rules? And that is what dragged the play down for the netrunner, is that the netrunner did not know the rules that they should know. And especially if they have an interface of more than two, they should know the rules as a player. And the character should know the rules.
I mean, every now and then, having to like update someone on, you know, what's available to them is one thing. But if they don't even bother to, yeah, just at that point, no, we're just going to go back to Netrunners as NPC.
Yep. Yeah. Because if the player's not willing to learn it, because that's where the quickness happens, is the players know what to roll, when to roll it, and how to achieve their goal. If they're constantly struggling and asking you, and God, you know, I don't know all the rules at any particular time. I sometimes have to look them up too, because maybe there's an obscure rule that this netrunner is finally using. And instead of them learning the rule and telling me how it works, I have to go off and look it up. And that's the killer to the gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any other rule. Like, you expect the player to know how to, you know, roll a skill check, or, you know, how to shoot someone in game, how combat works. If you're going to play a netrunner, you need to know the rules, not just the GM. Because when you don't, it drags the game down to a crawl for everyone, because you're in the net. They all have to wait for you to get done with what you're doing.
Yep.
Now, we've talked about the official rules as they were written in the main book. We've talked about how we do it. It's worth mentioning that, you know, there were some alternative rules from the official sources. The most interesting and perhaps the most fun of the alternative 2020 net running rules were presented in Ray Bartmos's Brainware Blowout. In the late 90s, Wizards of the Coast, when they were still pretty new, I mean, Magic was a thing, but it wasn't anything like it is now. They got the license for a game called Netrunner from R. Talsorian Game. And with Brainware Blowout, it gave you the rules to use that card game, that collectible card game, as your net running rules for within the role-playing game. So you would just, like, you and the GM would sit down and you would play the card, a round of the card game really quick. If you knew the rules, it took maybe 5-10 minutes. And it was fun. If the GM trusted the player, he could trust the player to, like, for small things, just run it by himself on the side and just give you the results. We used that for a long time because it was fun. The cards, however, soon got to be really expensive and really hard to find. Now, you can now find databases of the cards online, as well as automated programs that'll let you play. I linked to a couple of those on my site. I don't know if they're still active. It's been a while since I looked. But I'm sure you can still find the cards themselves online. If you want a fun alternative way to do it, there's that. There's a new net running game. They bought the rights to the name Netrunner from Wizards of the Coast, but it's not tied into R. Talsorian at all, as far as I know. In addition, and I would be very lax not to mention it, there is an excellent, I mean, fantastic fan resource out there called run.net, and it's written by some friends of ours from the Views from the Edge forum. I very much recommend that. It's a little bit more complicated than either Will or Mine system, but but it's much more. It's a much better alternative than the rules is written. It streamlines it, not to the degree that we have, but or even the degree that Red has, but it's a much more balanced look at Netrunning.
Yep. Yeah, so, again, I think we kind of covered the whole subject. And like I said, I saw a lot of people in the community, either trashing Netrunning, which I get, right? Because there's always that misconception. But for RunNet, is that what you're asking, Rob?
You can find it, the View from the Edge forum. Here's the link. There's an entire subsection of the forum devoted to it. You'll probably have to actually join the forum, like sign up to access it. But yeah, Run.net's fantastic. It's written by Companero and Interrupt. Originally, other people have contributed to it, of course, because it's a kind of a group project. But they're the ones who started the whole thing. That's where a lot of the old school legends of Cyberpunk used to gather, and in fact, a lot of the contributors to my work, that's where I know them from. Run.net is the name of the system. It's not a website. Rob, I'm sorry about the confusion there.
Let's see if I can get...
There are... It's hosted on other places. I don't know them off the top of my head at the moment.
So that link is the forum. It might be in there, or you might be able to ask them. I'm surprised you don't have a link on your your site somewhere.
I probably do. It's
one of those things that are buried.
It's one of those things that gets buried.
Whether it's in your file thing or... We'll find...
There's also some other people who, came in late and tried to take all the credit for it.
Right.
So I'm very careful with, where I send people to find it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, so that's something that I would say definitely people in the Cyberpunk 2020 or even Facebook group, or probably your group as well.
I'm pretty sure I've got it in my file project. Let me take a look there really quick.
I gotta help you organize your site.
Archives.
And make these things way better. I know your mad mind, you can find everything, but...
I'd like to say that, but the truth is I have no clue what I'm doing half the time.
Because there's so much... hidden stuff in your site. Like all your gear stuff.
Not hidden, done with the tech section.
Well, like all your gear, like you have gear in the Ultra Chrome, you have gear in your source books. Some of it's linked together, some of it's not.
Yeah, I can see how that could get confusing. Netrunning, duh. There's a whole section.
Cyberpunk Archives.
Yeah, here we go. This is a beta of Run.net. I don't know how close to how many versions have come out since then.
Yeah.
But this will give you the basic rundown. I've tried to keep it updated. But
Keep in mind it might not work on current OSs.
what, my website?
No, run.net. Isn't it a program?
It should just be a PDF.
Oh, the PDF?
Yeah.
I thought there was a program, wasn't there, back in the day that someone made?
Not that I'm aware of. As far as I know, it's always just been a web article. Like it's just text.
Yeah, because I think I have a .NET, or not a .NET, a very old school DOS program.
Oh, yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, we're talking like old school stuff.
I mean, a lot of that stuff is just lost to antiquity. I've tried to save as much of it as I can with the archives. Like the Wayback Machine usually won't have copies of any
Yeah.
of that type of thing. Just like images, they're the first to go.
That's that. Damn, I could have sworn I had some old school program that I could never get working on my machine. Well,
Yeah, there were a lot of those too, written for very specific OSs.
I wonder if
usually Linux.
Paper Dragon has.
That's what I would have suggested is check out, Paul Romain's site. Who knows?
Yeah, Paul Romain
But, yeah.
is the one who actually got me into my development work.
I used to hang out with him all the time on like ICQ. And,
Yep. Good old days.
yeah, I don't know how. Oh yeah, they're ICQ and the news groups. FRP, Rec 20, Cyberpunk news groups. Back when those existed. I'm sure they still exist, but I don't know of anybody who still uses them for anything. No, that's because I don't still use them for anything, so they could be still popular. I know people still use Usenet, so for IRC chat, shit like that, so who the fuck knows? Old school ways.
Let me give me a second. Rob, I will get the link as well. So Paper Dragon paper-dragon.com. That's some old school utilities. I gained some inspiration from that site for my own utilities, so he hasn't touched that code in 20 months, so keep that in mind. Or not 20 months, 20 years. So keep that in mind when you go to his site. The second link I gave, which was the file project details, that's the PDF for run.net. But yeah, we're a little bit over, but I think it was a good night overall. A lot to talk about, especially with Cyberpunk 2077 and edgerunners and all that fun stuff that's upcoming. And then Netrunning, I think we covered most of it. Hopefully people find it useful. At least our thinkings of how to do Netrunning. And again, there's not just ours. There's probably quite a few more out there that and how they do it. But in my opinion, don't be afraid to allow netrunners. And like I said, if you do allow netrunners, whatever system you choose, make sure that player knows the rules. and it shouldn't be up to you.
Stick with it.
All right. With that said, I think that's about going to call it a wrap for tonight. You got anything else we need to cover?
I mean, net running is kind of like the minutia of it is. It's like it is in the game. It's like it is in real life. Like it sounds exciting, but then talking about it kind of drags down and becomes tedious. So for anybody who's still awake listening to us, we presented you with several different ways to accomplish net running. I hope you find one that's useful for you in your game.
Yes. So, all right. So. I guess we'll wrap this up. I am Cybersmily. You can find me on several of the Discords as well as Reddit. I don't do Facebook or Twitter. Sorry, those places are too toxic for me. But you can also check out my site at cybersmily.net. That's Cybersmily without the last E. I got fun utilities there, some rules, some data, a bunch of stuff that hopefully, not only for Cyberpunk 2020, but also Cyberpunk Red. So go check that out. Over to you, Wisdom.
Wisdom 000. I run Datafortress2020.com. You can find pretty much anything you're looking for there, except for the groovy programs that he writes. I am here on Discord, although it kind of overwhelms me sometimes, so I'm slow to respond. You can also find me on Facebook. You can get a hold of me through my email, which is on my site. If you've still got AIM or ICQ, you might be able to find me there. As always, please send us messages with any questions, complaints, or criticisms. Suggestions, anything like that. We love to hear that stuff. Any kind of feedback we get from you guys. I want to thank Rob Mulligan and Cyberpunk Uncensored for hosting us.
Cybernation Uncensored.
Is that not what I said? What did I say?
Cyberpunk. I know. We're old school guys.
I did your thing. Yeah. Yeah. Cybernation Uncensored. Great guys. Great group. We're proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. And we also have a channel on their Discord that I often go to. So if you post something there, I will respond. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, I try to get to any of the comments on the YouTube versions of these and try to answer some questions. I don't go to every single episode on a regular basis, but I try to at least stop in and just take a look to see if there's any chatter on any of these videos. So with that said, I think we can wrap this up. Another show. Our next episode, we're going to be covering Solo's Fortune 2, because we just couldn't get it to it, and Solo Fortune was... Well, I thought was going to be easy because I didn't think there was going to be that much.
A lot in there.
And Solo of Fortune 2 has a lot more because I reread it recently, and damn, they pack a lot of stuff in those books. So we'll see you in 2 weeks, and enjoy, and definitely go out and play Cyberpunk 2077. It's a fun game.
2020, and Red, and whatever else you can play.
Yeah. Play games and have fun.
Key, folks. It keeps you from getting old.
That it does. All right. I'm out.
Good night, peoples. See you soon.